Okay, let's try that again. Thank you, Michael C. 2012 or 2112 anyway, for pointing out that my audio was not working, my mic nor my, I guess neither my my music output. So everything should be working now. Looking at OBS over here. So I guess I'll start all over. Happy 2018, everyone. This is my first stream back this year. I took a couple weeks break for the holidays, and yeah, Michael C says, yeah, it's good now. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. So yeah, I took a little break and didn't do very much in terms of coding. I kind of needed to recharge the batteries a little bit. What I did do was just mainly a bit of cleanup in the code, and I was just talking about this pimple wrapper that I wrote. Pimple being the private implementation pattern that's used in C++ to hide your private data members, or mainly dependencies on classes and types you don't want to expose in the header. And just for a little bit of fun, I was thinking about it over the break, how it would be kind of interesting to write a wrapper class where you specify the type that you would like to wrap, but it's a forward declared type. And you specify a size in bytes that would be large enough to hold this type. And I have the size policy that basically is either the size here must match exactly the size of t, or must be at least greater than or equal to the size of t. And then the idea is that in the CPP file where this type t would be completely defined, it's able to validate that. So, and then basically it uses placement new. Actually, yeah, what it does is I use a line storage of that size, so that just have this kind of buffer that's large enough to store that size. And in the code here, like in the constructor, for instance, over here, we basically construct into the buffer. So here's a placement new into the storage buffer. And yeah, it is like I support copy and moves, and obviously destructor will do a destructor call into that buffer. Yeah, Michael C says it's been a while since you joined me. Actually, if my stuff's working correctly, we should be seeing your messages on my screen when you write them. But yeah, thanks for joining, man. Appreciate it. Yeah, so anyway, this is just a cute little experiment. I don't really know how great it is. I know one of the problems with it, like I'm happy that it supports copy and move and all that for any type T. That supports copy and move. One problem I know is that it doesn't have it wouldn't support T's that have special alignment requirements, because I don't actually set the aligned storage to have that alignment. And so let's say I placement new a type T into there, and that T has alignment requirements. I think what's going to happen is it's going to yeah, I think it's going to basically place it at the beginning of that buffer, and if that buffer is not aligned, it won't work. So normally what I would have to do is maybe make this large enough and deal with the alignment when I do my placement new or something. But yeah, using a line of or something. But I'm not going to worry about that now because I don't really have any types of special alignment, and this is more like a toy experiment than anything else. I am using it in one place where I was using the old pimple method, which is the more standard way, which is using unique pointer. And I decided to just try it with this one instead. The one advantage of using this type over, say, unique pointer is that it's better for cache. So let's say you access a function like execute instruction here, and that's going to access, say, this data member, which will load it into cache. Well, if it's a unique pointer, it's going to then end up having to load data that's somewhere else in memory, because it's a pointer pointing to some data somewhere else, right? Whereas now, since this data member has all its data kind of in line, like in the same block of memory, that'll already be loaded in cache. So basically we skip this one extra layer of indirection in terms of loading up data into the cache, and so technically it's cache friendlier. Now, does that make a big difference? In my case, I don't really think so. But it does make some difference, but I haven't measured it, or it wasn't really about that. It was just more just for kind of like for kicks, just to kind of explore that. I like to do that kind of thing over the holiday. Apart from that, oh yeah, so I did do some changes to effectively stringify my shaders. So all my shaders were I mean, they are in separate files, but these files were required to be like, distributed with the binary, with the executable, in order for the emulator to work, because it would load the files off disk and compile them. And what I did is I found something online that suggested this way of doing it, which is you wrap all the code up into a C++11 raw, like a raw string. So that's what this is. And the trick, so I did this with all the shaders. So I've got this at the top and bottom there. And in my, where is it? GL render, I have this section where, yeah, here you go. This namespace shader source. And what I do is I basically have these like strings that are equal to, and then the trick is to do an include of each one of those files. And then you put a semicolon here. So what this basically does, it says just include this file, and this file contains a string, right? A raw string definition. And so I have these const char stars here, and then after that I'm able to load my shaders directly from there. So effectively it just compiles into the executable all the shader code as strings. So that's nice, because now I can literally just ship the one executable along with SDL2. So just these two files are required right now to use the emulator. So that's kind of nice. I think I had a test in my... Oh yeah, and the BIOS ROM as well. Yeah, like these files here, if I remove them, right now the minimum is the executable, this SDL2 DLL. I mean, I could even get rid of that if I wanted to. I could like statically link against SDL2, I believe. Yeah. So then I could even get rid of that, and then I just need to have this one BIOS ROM binary, and then this guy would work. So that works. And apart from that, I didn't do much else. So that's sort of where I'm at. Like if I run it like this, oh yeah, there was one other thing I did do earlier in the break. I'll just let this build. While that builds, I'll open up. Okay, so there's the emulator with overlays and everything. So yeah, what I did was I continued to fill in this compatibility list. And what I did is I broke it up into different, because I had this one massive table with like all ROMs. Yeah, Michael C is pointing out DRM GUI. Yeah, totally. It's like so useful. I love DRM GUI. Allows me to mess around with things like this. Turn off the overlay, turn off the blur. Yeah, it's really cool. Or play with the different parameters for the blur, like this line glow width. Definitely a boon to productivity when you're working with graphic stuff and you just want to experiment with things. Yeah, so I broke it down into these different tables. I have the commercial released ROMs, and I have commercial unreleased ROMs. I didn't even know these existed, but they do apparently. And then homebrew ROMs. Now I didn't test them all, but what I did do is I tested at least all the base versions of the commercial released ROMs, because my goal is to get at least these ones working first. And I think if these work, then most of the rest should start working. So Michael C is asking if my he says the emulator is looking brilliant. Thank you. Does it play most games accurately? Well, that's what this is going to show. Not really. There's a whole bunch of ROMs that are not quite working. Some ROMs work really well. Some ROMs have some issues. So I have a few untested here. Anything that says great, that's a ROM that works well. Good is it works pretty well with just a couple of issues. So yeah, obviously all these are all different versions of Mindstorm. Those mostly work. Ripoff works really well, which I'm glad because that's a game I really like. So I can show you that. So like if I open here and go to Ripoff, so I don't actually have an overlay for it, which is kind of weird. Just got to find one. But yeah, let's say we speed this up. So this is Ripoff. Ripoff's a really cool game. You're this. They say you're a tank, even though I've never seen a tank of this shape. But you're supposed to protect these kind of triangles from these guys, and you can see you turn kind of slowly, and you do kind of move like a tank, and you gotta shoot these dudes before they come and grab. I'll just show you what happens if I don't shoot them. So see, they grab these and they steal them away. So the game is to shoot the bad guys and hope they don't steal all your barrels, and see how long you last and how many points you get. This is a game I really enjoyed. I think it's pretty cool. Don't know why my pause button is not working. It's supposed to be the P. P is supposed to pause the game. I don't know why it's not working. Weird. Anyway. Just curious if I put a breakpoint here. Am I calling this? I am calling this. Maybe I broke it. But yeah, what else? Oh yeah, Space Wars works, Spike works. Spike is actually a really cool game. I should show you that game. I'll just plug my controller in a second. Yeah, I'm not hitting that breakpoint for some reason. Oh, wait. Is it because... I see why. Yeah, that's right. I refactored this code, but the problem is I need to update my input before I do my frame time. Yeah. Yeah, I can do that. I can just move this down. That'll fix it. There we go. Let's see here. Yeah, now it's gonna work. So yeah, let's show off a couple of games here that actually work well. There's pause working now. So I said Spike. Spike is a really cool game because it's got this whole like 3D perspective on it. Let's plug this in. Alright, restart this. There's also a bunch of sounds and stuff that we can't hear now because I haven't implemented that yet, but still. So this is Spike. Spike can kick with one foot or the other. You can jump, and he has to grab a key, and you can press a key to move this ladder. Now the ladder is not being rendered perfectly, so that's part of the kind of bugs that I have to fix, which is why this is good but not great in terms of did I put good? No, I put great. I should put good, because that definitely not being rendered properly, but anyway, it's pretty close. And you have to get to the top and go into this door. See, this bad dude takes Molly away from Spike, and now you gotta go and rescue her. So now there's like baddies. Michael C says, I think I've seen this game before. You mean on a different system? It's possible. Yeah, and then sometimes you fall into holes, but I don't know how to tell which one is a hole, so I don't know if that too is a rendering bug. This game is kind of cute. So that's another one. What else do I have? Oh yeah, Space Wars is pretty cool. Actually, I think it was this one. Yeah. So Space Wars is supposed to be a version of Space War. Okay, so there, I have this ship. I actually already lost some bits. There we go. And it's like it's me against the computer here, but you can also play 2 players, which is really cool. And you can see that my ship kind of looks like the USS Enterprise from Star Trek. And this thing in the middle, I don't know if it's supposed to suck you in, because it doesn't really seem to have much of an effect. It's a star, but if I touch it, I die. Or maybe what it does is it sucks in those asteroids. I don't know. Oh, I just ran out of gas and bullets. Now I don't know what to do. And now we just stay here until we die. Super strange. So that Space Wars. There's a game called Starship, which I think is similar to Space Wars. Let me see this. Oh no, okay, this one's similar to the Star Trek game. It's really basically a rip-off of the Star Trek game. Web Warp. I think this one was a cool game. Oh yeah, this one's really cool. You're like this kind of bird dude or something, and you can fly and you can... Apparently you can capture things. I haven't quite figured out the gameplay yet. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to capture. Maybe those bug things. See, this like line is supposed to be capture, and then I can fire at things. But I like the whole perspective. Oh yeah, and you can increase your speed. How do you do that? by moving up this way. Now I'm starting to go a bit faster, and I just got shot down by some kind of bird. Let's see, if I press forward like this, we start to go a little bit faster. Or a lot faster, really. Hey, Levin Bot. So yeah, this is a cool game. What else I got? Oh yeah, there's a cool soccer game that works pretty well. These ones too, Fortress of Narzad and Cosmic Chasm. Anyway, so what I was hoping to do was pick something that's not working and see if I can get closer to understanding why and trying to fix it. Thinking, because a lot of these games have these invalid writes or invalid reads. So just picking one that, you know, does it early on. But maybe not a B3 version. Let's see here. Levinbot says the illusion, this is really cool. The illusion makes it hard to see. Yeah, that's true. But again, you know, there may be some errors in the rendering on my end as well. I don't know. But yeah, it's pretty cool. The illusion makes it hard to see sharp though. Is that the joke? Ah. I didn't get the joke, you're right. So maybe this one. That's a candidate for me. So this is a cartridge read. So there are a few games that do this, where they read from the cartridge at an address that's, I think, unexpected. See another one. Here is read from unmapped range. Let's just try pole position just to see. So this is actually a pretty cool racing game when it works. Based on the arcade game Pole Position by Namco. And there we go. So I get this exception here. Ah, okay. I guess I must have had some of these queued up in there. Let me just rerun that again. I'll just speed it up. Okay, so there we go. So I got a read from unmapped range. Now, if I look at the trace, the last 10 instructions here. Yeah, so Michael C says it could be a valid read. Depends if the Vectrex would return what's in the latch. Yeah, that's the thing. It's possible. Now, you know, there's also like, I have some questions about the Vectrex and whether games were reading from specific addresses that were like special memory mapped hardware in the carts. I know the NES would have stuff like that, you know, for like bank switching. Or for, you know, looking to see if, I know on the NES, some of the carts you could read at certain addresses, memory mapped addresses, to like know whether you were, like which horizontal blank or like which row was currently being rendered, stuff like that. But I'm not sure whether the Vectrex had that kind of stuff going, you know, since it's vector based. So yeah, so that's it. It's all part of like kind of figuring this out. But here, reading from the unmapped range at this address, that just seems wrong. Like here, does this load A that's happening here in the game? And this is a direct pointer, direct page, sorry, instruction. So the DP right now is BD, and it wants to read from BD14. You'd have to decap a Vectrex CPU. Sure. But I mean, you know, there's a lot of information out there on the Vectrex CPU, so most of what I've done is based on that information that I've been able to glean from online documents. And I'm pretty sure like I just have some silly bugs left in my CPU that I gotta fix. So let me just do something here. I'm going to load something. Been a little bit of time since I've done this. I'm trying to refresh my memory. Oh yeah. So I have this feature I added to my debugger for loading symbols. Yeah, so now I get more symbols. It basically looks for known addresses and for symbols that I've parsed and shows me the values. So like we can see here that this code is writing to the via port A, via port B. So if I grab the last, how many, I forget how many I put in my ring buffer. 100,000? So let's grab those 100,000 and store them in a file. So these are the last 100,000 instructions. And I'll store those into a file, and then I'll take a look at that. Okay, so let's see. So that DP register is the one that contains BD, and BD14 is not in the valid memory mapped range. Let's see here. So 0 to 7 FFFF, that's the first 32K, that's the cartridge ROM space. So yeah. So BD puts me into this what's called the unmapped memory range. And we can see here that this instruction here actually loads into B 00C8. So load into B, what's the value that's in 00C8, which is this BD value. And then that's transferred into DP, and then that's used. So, you know, perhaps this is the problem, reading BD from this memory address. So there are a lot of questions here, like why is BD there? Is that, you know, did we compute the wrong thing and store that into 00C8? That's the kind of thing that we can try to look at. And of course, in my trace, there is no other reference to 00C8. But that's in the last 100,000 instructions, so it could have happened earlier. Now let me see if we executed this instruction otherwise. No, we didn't. Okay, so all this code, starting from F1, F5, is this joy analog code. So we were at 00D7. And then we went to 00DA. Michael C says, I read on a forum that the unmapped region can be mapped to the cartridge. Is that right? Well, that's interesting. If you find that link on a forum, I would really appreciate that. That sounds really interesting. Because that could explain these reads from these kinds of areas. One thing I want to try is I want to try this, making this 100,000 bigger. So Michael C just sent me this link. My question is whether 8000 to C7FF space can be used contiguously with the program code, specifically the output from GCC. Does a program which exceeds 07FF work in the emulator by default, or do you need to do something special to make it work? And will the same code work in hardware as a standard cartridge or with some special cartridge? Cartridge ROM space. The cart line is also gated with not EAT, so the signal can be fed directly to the output enable of a ROM. Right. Now this address range is not gated with the read-write line, but this line is fed to the cartridge connector. So where does it say that it can be mapped to? Am I not reading this right? It would be nice if I could use 8000 to C7FF rather than having to explicitly page dynamically. Oh, okay. There's more. Although it is not unheard of that special cartridges use the upper memory regions. Spectrum RA uses 8000 to 87FF for additional extra RAM. Oh, that's cool. SID card is accessed with its registers mapped to 8000 to 801F. I've used the 8000 to C7FF as extra memory in some of my projects. It's a whole 17K of untapped memory. So there are some special carts that have them mapped to some memory. But I mean, I doubt that the game that I'm running, right? Yeah, I don't think pole position is doing that. Yeah, so basically special carts that end up mapping those addresses. Usually they're unmapped. And and pole position is one of the original carts, then I'm pretty sure there's nothing special about pole position. I don't see where it gets remapped to the cartridge space though. I'm going to increase the number of traces to 1,000,000. And actually load the game that we're interested in, which is pole position. So maybe I won't put all of them, but I'll put 200,000 for now. In fact, what I could do instead is, if I think that we are going to write C8. put a... Should I put a right breakpoint, I suppose? Okay, we added a watch point on that address. Just curious if we ever write to it. So we don't. So apparently we are doing a load B. Michael C says he finds it quite curious that the A is loaded with C8XX and then you read from 00C8. Where do you see that? Oh, here? I see what you mean. The fact that the C8 here and C8 here. So C8, so basically C8 is, like when we look at the memory map, that's basically like RAM, you know? And in fact, C880 to CBEA is what normally is used, you know, by games. It's like available, the 874 bytes available to the programmer. So the fact that we're loading from C8BF isn't completely surprising because that's right in this range. So this would be like, you know, just some value in RAM that the game is using. What is more weird perhaps is this load B 00C8. Because 00C8, that would actually be, this would be like data embedded in the ROM, which is a bit strange. If I really am reading from there. See, actually there it is, right? 00C8 is an instruction, so this is totally wrong. We can see here that 00C8 has BD F1 B4, and we're reading the first byte at 00C8, which corresponds to this jump subroutine. So that's for sure wrong. So maybe my problem is the way I'm decoding and executing this instruction here. Load B 00C8, F6 00C8. That's what I was looking at just earlier. Here. Index extended. Load D, load B. Do I have a load A extended? You know probably what it is? It's supposed to be maybe C800. Maybe I'm just doing this wrong. But that doesn't make a lot of sense. Need to refresh my memory a bit on extended mode. So the most significant byte is the first one, and then the least significant byte is the next one. So that would correspond to 00C8. As a special case of indexed addressing, one level of indirection may be added to extended addressing. In extended indirect, the 2 bytes following the post byte of an indexed instruction contain the address of the data. So let me just make sure that F6 really is a load B to begin with. I'll use, yeah. Yeah, so load B extended here. Alright, so we have load B extended. Apparently load A extended is B6. How did I see that? Oh yeah, there it is. Guess I must have just missed it. Okay, so it should be using read operand value. Oh yeah, read operand value 16. Right, so it's going to do a read EA16 based on the address mode, and it's not immediate, in which case it's going to say, oh no, here it is, extended. It's going to call read extended EA. So that's what should happen, so let's just make sure. I'm going to use debug mode so I don't have to worry about removing optimizations everywhere. Okay, so here we have an example where we are reading C8 to A. See, that's more what we would expect. So that extended reads would read from values like this. So where are we right now? Like this. This is probably what we're reading right now. F6 C8 to A. That's a load B at C8 to A, which is mapped to these variables here. So I mean, this tells me that load B is not necessarily the problem. It's working as expected. What's odd is that we are executing this instruction that is a load B from 00C8. Why would we, is it that we shouldn't be here? Check something. F4, F3. So this is a BIOS routine. I need the BIOS with the addresses. Yeah, get the text height from the Vectrex height here. F6 C8 to A. And that's what Vectrex is mapped to, C8 to A. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think my problem is specifically with the load B implementation. So we come back to why do we go on to an instruction that tries to load from 00C8 when we know that that really is code? This is the special case that I wrote down in my comments, but I didn't quite understand it. Extended indirect. I think I must be handling that in indirect mode. I think that's what this refers to, because I do have that. I wrote this. Is this handled under? I wrote under indexed, but I think I meant indirect. Oh no, I think I did mean. Yeah, that's it. Index is the complicated one. And this is the one where you can say supports indirect. Yeah, this is what it must be referring to. Because here you can specify a 16-bit value, like here, a plus or minus 15-bit offset. And it can also be, let's see if I can find it. Supports indirect is true. So it could support it, and if the post byte has a bit set, then yeah, then we can use that to then look up the next address. So that must be what it's referring to, like what they're calling extended indirect here. Even though technically it's not extended, it's still a relative address. Push SDP. Push to the stack the value stored in DP. which is D0. So that goes to CBE7, which is what the stack points to here. Right, because we move the stack back a byte because it was at CBE8, now it's CBE7, and we write to it. Yeah, not sure what's going on. Let me see if I have extra information in my longer trace. Yeah, very curious. I mean, in some, you know, I've read about like some games like Atari VCS or Atari 2600 games that are so low on memory that they put in hacks like, you know, to save some memory. If you need to load a value and you know that there's an instruction that has the value you need, you read from your instructions to get that value. But I really doubt that's what's happening here. But I mean, this code looks correct, you know? Let me see if I just go up a bit higher. Okay, so this is a wait recal call. All of this here. So it's waiting to recalibrate. So it's basically polling the via interrupt flags here. Which jumps to recalibrate. Like all of this looks valid. And then when we leave the BIOS code, we go back into user to game code here. We have a read buttons mask calls so it wants to read like the button states. This all looks like button state reading code. Then we come back, we clear the joystick values here. We jump to joy analog. Which does a bunch of joystick stuff, and when it's done, it loads into A the value at C8BF, which is 1. It says branch if equal to 03. It's not, it's 1, so we don't branch to 00E2. So we continue. It says now jump to this subroutine at 0B64, and in that subroutine, it starts by pushing DP to the stack. Because, and this kind of makes sense, right? We push DP because we want to overwrite DP with another value so that we can start using that. So we want to overwrite this direct page value and then, you know, ostensibly restore it later, right? Yeah. Michael C saying maybe this branch equal. I mean, I suppose at some point this value will be, perhaps now it's 1, maybe it'll be 2, then 3. So maybe this will happen 3 times or something. I don't know. But, I mean, it is a branch if equal. So if it's not equal, we should be continuing. And like I said, it kind of makes sense that whatever this function does, it starts by saving the value of DP to then restore it later. And that currently the value is D0, which is usually what DP is set to. Because D0 points to that, like I was saying in the, you know, in the memory map, D0, actually, is it often D0? Oh yeah, it is often D0 because it's when you want to do a lot of polling or writing to via registers which start at D0, you set DP to that and then you can use just the direct page instructions. So it's typically D0. So here we want to push it and then modify it. So that's what these two instructions do. They're saying let's load B with some value and transfer it from B into DP, and then we can start using, like the next instruction is a load A using the DP instruction. There is still a question of what this load A would be useful for though, in that case. Seems, oh no, sorry, that's it. This one is useful for this branch if equals. Then we jump here and then that's it. In here, we want to save DP override it with some value and then start using, let's say, like read a value into A at offset 14 from whatever the current DP is. But what's really curious here is the fact that this load B seems to be reading from an instruction, not from actual data, which is super odd. Especially the fact that there's a C8 here. It feels like the 00 shouldn't be here. Maybe it should have been C8-1F. F6. Is that the problem? No. I was gonna say, because I know like we have like these tables of opcodes, page 0, and we have page 1 and page 2. But usually that's the first byte that you read for an instruction. Let me see here. If it's an opcode page 1 or page 2, what is this again? That's it. It would be 0x10 or 0x11 in the instruction stream if it was a page 1 or page 2, but it's not. It's really a page 0 instruction. So Michael C says it could be a dumping error. Well, if it was a dumping error, there wouldn't be, you know, like it would be at many places, right? The 00C8 here, 00C8 here, 00C8 here. These are all separate locations in my code. But, you know, we could take a look in the ROM at this offset using a hex editor just to really verify. Okay, so there it is in the hex editor, F600C8. So yeah. And before it is 3408, yeah. Runs super slow in debug. Oh. Broke something. There we go. So when you meant a dumping error, did you mean the ROM could have been dumped incorrectly? Is that what you meant? I think that's what you meant. I mean, if that's true, then this ROM wouldn't work in any other. Actually, you know what I could try? I could try with the other CPU implementation that the Vectrex CPU implementation. Where is that again? Here, this guy. Let's cherry pick this just to see if that works. All right, so I have a conflict. Let's see. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so I'll just try running it with this other CPU. Oh yeah, I need to run cmake that. Just get to see the lines. Alright, that's good. Now pole position. Oh well, what do you know? Even with the other CPU implementation, it still gets there. That's really interesting. Same error. So let's try it with the other emulator then. Unfortunately, I think this one here runs on my other monitor, but let's just see. Does that show? Yeah, unfortunately it doesn't render when I put on my second monitor. This emulator, it's a bit strange. I think I had a way to view it. Oh no, but this... You know what? It doesn't work. So maybe it is a bad dump. Huh. Here, I'll just run it again. I used to have a capture, but I guess I got rid of it. Display capture. Video display. Window capture. Vectrex. So this is the Vectrex emulator output. You guys can see that now. So notice it doesn't like crash or anything, but it ends up going to Mindstorm, which is really not pole position. So my guess is that it's failing at some point, and rather than crash, it seems to jump to the default Mindstorm game. It'd be great to have some like error output or something. Okay, so let me kill that. So there's a B1 and an F1. Curious how different these are. So there's a lot of 0D, 0A, which look like new line. Ah, look at this. F600 over here is C6. And then C8. Is this the same offset? It must be, right? F600C8 is now just... In fact, it's not even an F6 anymore. It's been replaced with a C6. What's C6? So it looks like it would be a bad ROM. Right, it was replaced with a load immediate. So Michael C, looks like you're right. Looks like it is a bad dump because this next version of the ROM, they removed this F600 and replaced it with a C6, which still loads B, but it loads B immediate using C8 here. In fact, it's C812. So it's reading, yeah, exactly, it wants to read from C812. Which would then ostensibly have the value that it wants to store into the direct page register. Okay, so let's try instead loading this other version of the ROM rather than this one. And I'm going to mark that this one here is a bad dump. So pole position 1. Let's see if this one works. No, now I get a different invalid cartridge read at the same place, at the same time anyway, but not the same place necessarily. No, not the same place in the code. What about F1? Huh, this one actually works. So maybe the B1 was also a bad dump? I'll try B1 in Vectrex just to see. Okay, so it kind of works, but my input's kind of messed. It doesn't want to go straight. It can only go left or right. Okay, so I have a few ROMs that have input problems, so this doesn't surprise me. But it's cool to see the game actually works. Okay, so yeah, I wanted to try Vectrex with the B1 version. Just make this a bit bigger. No, see, Mindstorm again. So really those two ROMs are just bad. And if I try the F1 version with Vectrex, huh. So Vectrex doesn't want to run that one either? Wait a minute, wait a minute. I must be using Vectrex incorrectly. I think I remember you have to do something like -C or something for cartridge. Is that what it is? Cannot open. Right, and it doesn't support spaces in the file name. Okay, so it's actually, when I said it wasn't running the first one, I was not right. Yeah, this emulator is a little bit finicky. We're gonna want to remove the spaces in here. So let's retry that again. So it's vecx-c like this. Cannot open hold position. Maybe without the. There we go. Okay, so let's see if this one works. So maybe it's not a bad dump. Let's see. Okay, now it's actually trying to play pole position. We didn't get this far before. Oh no, look, see, it works. Okay, so definitely something wrong on my end. Or what it could be is it could just be that I'm not tolerant to these invalid reads, but that, you know, if I was to just ignore the invalid read, it would somehow work. That's possible. Because we saw that the diff between the two, they did actually change this, what causes the invalid read for me to something else. So so let's see if we were, I think, let me just try and continue with my debugger, because I did make it so that you can keep going. We'll see if that actually works. Hold position. That's it. Now that DP is wrong, it's going to keep trying to read from that DP until it finally... Oh, but look, we actually can see in the back, if I keep saying go, there's the car. Read and write to unmapped range. So let's try making it just not report an error for these read or write to unmapped range. Let's not fail. And let's try pole position this way. Yeah. So now we're ignoring those invalid reads and writes to the unmapped range. And there we go. Now it's actually looking like it's working. So I got the same input problem. Okay, so that's interesting, right? Because it means that it is the ROM that's doing something invalid. Oh, Michael C says he checked the Vectrex source and Vectrex ignores invalid reads. And I suppose invalid writes, because it also does an invalid write. Yeah. See, that's the thing, right? Like, if I ignore invalid reads and invalid writes, that will let me, you know, run some ROMs that are actually doing invalid and invalid writes. But what it might also do is hide bugs in my emulation for when, you know, catching such an invalid read or write would help me detect that, you know? For an invalid write, it does nothing, right? For an invalid read, it returns 0xFF. Which is just arbitrary, right? I mean, I return 0. So yeah, I'm always on, like, kind of on the fence for this kind of thing, you know? So maybe what I'll do is, because this is not the only place, there's this is the unmapped memory device, but I have also like invalid cartridge reads. And writes, which may, you know, like I've mentioned this before, it may be okay to write to cartridge ROM if that's what it uses for bank switching and stuff like that, but for now that's what I'm doing. What else? Yes, I have this here. Yeah. So that's pretty much it. Let me open my compatibility list here. See, now I question all my invalid reads here. I'll say good. And I'll say input. Can't draw it straight. Okay. So let's see, not invalid cartridge. Do I have another invalid? What was my error? Read from unmapped range. So I have a write to unmapped range here. No boot, invalid write. Spinball. Let's try spinball just to see. Now that I've disabled the check. Hey Blue Dragon. How's it going, man? trying to see if I can fix some more bugs. Spent a little bit of time on a bug that turned out to be an actual problem with the real cartridge itself, or the dump of the cartridge, and not with my emulator at least. What did I want to check? Or Spinball. Cool. Can't believe they made games like this. Those are always the best bugs, I know. I mean, it didn't make sense, you know, like everything looked right, and it's actually Michael C, who's also watching, who pointed out that maybe it was a bad dump. So I was like, I went to go look at the ROM in a hex editor, and it did contain that code. So then I decided to try on a different CPU implementation for this other emulator, and it gave me the same error. And then when I ran it with the Vectrex emulator, it worked there. So basically, the real ROM, either the real ROM or it's a bad dump of the ROM, but let's say it's the real cartridge, actually does invalid reads and writes at some point. There's actually just bad code in there. And on the real hardware, it just, you know, didn't fail because the hardware doesn't care. It tried to read from an invalid range, probably returns whatever was like still latched on the memory bus, and just moved on, you know. So basically bugs in the original game. So this game also seems to work if I ignore. So let's say instead of fail, we were to just print this message, right? The ball looks offset. Yeah, that's possible in the game, yeah. Error F will require me to include console outputs. Michael's has to go. It was good to talk with you and see the progress, though. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for your help, Michael C. So yeah, Blue Dragon, I definitely have like some offset issues here and there. So that boils down to the way I'm rendering lines. There must be some timing issues because I have a few issues related to that. So what was I trying? Yeah, so first if I do pole position, it's probably gonna spam like crazy. Let's see. I'll make this a bit smaller. So there's the spamage. So weird how this input works for this game. This might be a good game though for me to kind of figure out what's wrong with the input, because I have a few games that have input problems. Yeah, so here we get all this spam for read write of the invalid addresses when I run this game. And if instead of this one, I were to load pole position, so B1 here should also give me maybe less of these kinds of errors. Alright, this is an invalid cartridge read that I get. This one's doing like weird stuff with the cartridge, so maybe I'd have to ignore those ones. And then finally, if I run the other pole position, I should get no messages, I think. Because that one was working. Pole position, F1. Yeah, so this one's giving me no issues in terms of invalid reads or writes. So I think what I would need, I need some kind of like, maybe either a global policy for what to do with invalid reads and writes. Blue Dragon says, how did people even dump these ROMs in the first place? There are actually, you know, some people have made these ROM dumpers. You can actually buy them. Yeah. Where basically you like plug in the cartridge into this reader and then it, you know, reads from the ROM in there and just like it reads from the memory in the cart on the cart and just writes out a big file. So I mean, I think that because there are these multiple versions, I think it actually is from the original ROM. I don't think it's a bad dump necessarily. I think it's just a dump that has of the real game that actually had that in there, and it didn't matter on actual hardware. So yeah, so what I was saying is I feel like what I need is like some kind of a policy to handle the different invalid reads and writes, and like it would be like 3 different values, you know. So if I open up here, let me go to my to-do list and just add something here. So like a invalid read write policy, or to be like, you know, do nothing, or so yeah, do nothing, basically print, or fail. And I suppose the do nothing would be the default for like the shipped version, and you know, fail would be for like development. Because if I had something like that, then maybe we could test some more of these ROMs and see if they really are failing because of my emulator, or because it's just a problem with the original cart. The only thing I don't like about these kind of things, these are like global options, and I don't really have a, you know, global options thing to access, and that means having to do that, or to like initialize each one of these devices with this policy, which sucks too. Maybe what I could do is kind of put that into a function, and then the function itself would be the only place that has that policy. Like how the way I have error f and printf, I could have another function, maybe not in console output, but somewhere else, and it'd be like, you know, invalid access f, and then we just basically have a format thing, and in there, based on the policy, I could decide what to do. So Ken is asking, so it's not something you just put in defines for if release or if debug? Yeah, no, that's a good, you know, that's a good question. I mean, I could start with something like that for now. And if I want to make it an actual, I don't really have, I have an options file there that I read here, but it's this options.txt file. But right now it's like really stuff that only the SDL engine cares about, like the window position and width and height and the font scale for ImGUI. And it's not really, I don't really have like emulator options. Like this is not really a full implementation. I'd have to kind of expand this out and have a proper file with like an ini file. This was just a quick hack. So maybe for now, yeah, maybe I would do something with defines and go with that for a little bit. But I wouldn't really use debug or release because I basically mostly run in release anyway because debug is just way too slow. I don't even remember what I did here. CPU memory bus. This is from my old emulator. Okay, no, it's this. My memory bus device. Memory bus. Tokens. Oh, hey, Benjamin. Yeah, Blue Dragon is an old friend of mine. We've known each other for a long time, and he worked on a really cool port, a homebrew port of Shining Force. This was some years ago, but yeah, he wrote this really cool PC version of Shining Force. Happy 2018 to you, man. Yeah, Blue Dragon, you should totally get back to that guy or start looking at your code again, maybe update it. So I'm thinking something like you need some kind of side project, yeah. Benjamin says, hint emulator. I totally agree with that one. So fun to write emulators. And you learn so much about hardware and you know, design, and it's really just a lot of fun. You may be crazy, but not that crazy. That's what I want to do. Fantasy console? That does look cool. Yeah, like Pico 8, exactly. That's what it's gonna say. This is like using special Unicode characters. Looks funky. Yeah, it is pretty neat. Yeah, I'm not sure what I'm gonna do. I need to think a little bit about this. Because like, on the one hand, I have, like, I don't want to have like a proliferation of ways to handle things. I have this, you know, I have error F and printf And console F, well, console F is just basically you pass in which stream you want to print to, standard stood out or stood error, and that's basically what printf. Printf is stood out and errf is stood error. But I feel like what I want maybe is just a higher level concept mapped on top of this. That's where I was going with the other thing. I'm gonna think a little bit about it. But yeah, I think, guys, I'm gonna stop it here. Think a bit about this, and I'll resume in a couple days. So Wednesday, a couple days on the 10th, same time, we'll continue on this. So guys, thanks for watching, and yeah, see you in a couple days. Take care.